What's going on, everybody? It is the one and only Q from Retro Q Gaming, back at it as always, and here we are with episode Deuce of the Quack Experimental Podcast. Now, we got some stuff to talk about this week. Most of it is fluff, not huge amount of important stuff going on, one or two, but yeah, not huge amounts. But anyway, of course, I just do want to. Damn, I look good. Different barber this week. My regular one's on holidays. He'll be gone for about another 2 weeks or so. So I decided I'd go somewhere new, somewhere different. A lot of places in my town have. However, I will say the gel this dude uses is a little too strong. I walked out, got a little bit windswept before it all set, and well, this just will not go away. I mean, I can shower it away later, but yeah. Damn, I look good. Anyway, on to our first little one. We have Megaman announcements. Now, no, we're not talking about all the other potential ones like Megaman 11 and 12 and maybe a new Megaman X game or a 3D one or Megaman Legends 3 or whatever it is. No. We're talking about another new upcoming collection that Capcom is going to release. After the success of the Megaman Legacy Collection, the Megaman Legacy Collection 2, Megaman X Legacy Collection, the one that everyone really and truly wanted. That was the big one, the pinnacle. And of course, the Megaman X Legacy Collection 2. Yeah, that is what it is. No. Everyone was wondering what was next for the good old Blue Bomber. But this one's not exactly for the Blue Bomber. This one is Megaman Zero Collection. That's right, we have the Megaman Zero/ZX Legacy Collection, as it's called. This one is going to be one big collection. It's not going to be broken into two like the others. And this one is going to consist of 6 games, including Megaman 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, Megaman ZX, and Megaman ZX Advent. Now, that's pretty cool because they're mostly just like handheld games. They started on the GBA, if I remember correctly, and then they went from there. It's going to be interesting. I know I played one of them way back in the day. I think it was 0-1. But I don't hold me to that 100%. But I did play one because a friend of mine had it, and I loved Mega Man X. And 0 I actually like a lot more than Mega Man or than X as a character. He's just so much cooler. But anyway, yeah, as you'd expect, it's coming to all 4 major platforms. Well, I should say all 3 major platforms and the Switch. It's coming to Xbox One, PS4, PC, and the Switch, and that's going to come out on January 21st, 2020 for the price of €30. Now, it's got a bunch of extras in it as well, as you'd expect with this type of collection, just like the Mega Man ones, the Mega Man X ones and all. It comes with filters, screen filters for scan lines, pixels, stretched, widescreen, blah, blah, blah. Difficulty options and all too, and over 600 pieces of artwork. It's pretty significant. Of course, it does encompass 6 different games, so yeah, there will be a lot of artwork in there too. Music player, the usual, the boss challenges, all that stuff. It's as you would expect. So we'll see how that is next year, January 21st. I believe maybe January 22nd because of time zones and possible releases and whatnot. But hey, January 21st/22nd, 2020 for about €30 or so. I know I'm going to pick it up. I don't know how it's going to go, but if it's anything like the Mega Man X Legacy Collection, or at least the first one, it's going to go pretty well. Now, next up, we got some remaster-related news. Not so much remaster-related news, more so, hey, we're pulling this away from your digital store so we can remaster it, which they pretty much aren't doing at all, and resell it to you at a massively inflated price to capitalize on stuff. No, we are still talking about the House of Mouse, but not Disney+. What we are talking about is the Aladdin and Lion King remasters. Big woolad in that one. But anyway, this was originally leaked as a partial image during a GameStop Manager conference for a physical version coming to PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. This game has since been announced officially, and it's coming to those 3 platforms as well as PC, which is kind of funny because they pulled down the previous version of, I think it was Aladdin, or I can't remember if it was Aladdin or Lion King, but I want to say it was Aladdin, from Steam. So they could do this. But yeah, it's coming this autumn, which is a couple of, we're basically in autumn. Actually, we are, depending on where you live in the world. I'm going with my one. So we do live in autumn, right? Meow. But it's getting weird. This one has all the announcements and different leaks and all, and despite all of that, all these articles and all these announcements about it vary ever so slightly. So what's going to happen is that they're going to include multiple different versions of the games. Not all of them, but multiple different versions. For example, back in the Super Nintendo and 16-bit days, some games could not release the exact same on both platforms. Let's look at Sunset Riders, for example. On the Super Nintendo, it was modified and it was different. However, the Mega Drive version was completely different from the Super Nintendo version. So you could see there was a bit of a difference there. Now, there were some games that were exactly the same on both platforms with very, very minor differences, usually down to how stuff was programmed or performance-wise or visuals or whatever. But in the case of Aladdin was completely different. The Super Nintendo version was one completely separate game, and the Mega Drive version was one completely separate game. Now, if I remember correctly, The Lion King is exactly the same on both platforms, but when it comes to Aladdin, when you look at all these games that had different versions on different platforms, back in the day it was usually considered 99% of the time that the SNES version would have the better version of the game. However, Aladdin is probably the one time off the top of my head where that is not the case, and the Mega Drive version was better. So, it makes me happy in that regard that out of all the different versions of all the different games and stuff they're including, some of them, I believe it's The Lion King, is going to have both versions of the game, or technically it's only listed as one because it's the same game, but it's going to have stuff like the Game Boy games, the Game Gear games, stuff like that. But when it comes to Aladdin, only the Mega Drive version is going to be included, not the SNES version, which is kind of strange because if I remember correctly, Capcom did both of them. I know Capcom did the Super Nintendo version. I want to say Capcom did the Mega Drive version as well. But of course, the Mega Drive version is a better game. It's a different game and it's a better game. It's more enjoyable. It's more fun. And unlike the Super Nintendo version, which did not have any of what I'm about to list, the Mega Drive version had proper Disney artists and Disney storyboarders and animators come in to help Sega, or help, I think it was Capcom, develop this game and make it look better, make it look more authentic and like the proper Aladdin cartoon. So, that's pretty cool in that regard. A bunch of my notes here basically are just from the original leak. And I was like, wonder if they'll use the Mega Drive or SNES versions of Aladdin. Wonder a few times the Sega version was better. I think the Lion King is the same game. I'll wait. They're doing all this to capitalize on the LOL hype of the new remakes. I know, right? For the Lion King and Aladdin. And the big problem with this one that a lot of people are worried about is that this is €40. This has been listed for €40. And if you've seen the screenshots and all for this, all they do is they have like the 4:3 pixel perfect thing in the middle and just big borders everywhere on the outside. There's big borders. Where am I? No, wrong hand. Everywhere on the outside. So you just still get your normal aspect ratio game in the middle and just big borders everywhere. Apparently that counts as a remaster. It has a couple of other things as well, like difficulty, autoplay, so you can just kind of watch the story and see all the cut scenes and stuff. And it's got like forward and I think not enough fast forward. I think just a save state thing and a rewind 15 seconds thing, so you can, if you're having trouble with it, you can just keep coming back. And an invulnerability thing as well. The big problem with this is the price. And the fact that they yanked I think it was Aladdin, which was previously on Steam. I can't remember if the Lion King was there, or I can't remember which version of it. Same thing. But they yanked some of these from digital storefronts in order to be able to do this. So, it's kind of bullshit. I don't know. Maybe some people will be happy about it. Maybe some people won't. I'm going to stick to emulation when it comes to these games. Actually, I have a physical copy of Aladdin on the Mega Drive. But, yeah. Maybe I'll pick up the Lion King eventually. Game is rock hard. Lion King is rock hard. That's a general consensus. Now, next up we got some PC related stuff. I don't even know why I'm talking about this, because it doesn't really apply for another 6 months or so. Now, Borderlands 3 official PC minimum and recommended specs have been announced. Now, looking at them, a lot of them make sense considering that it's using the Unreal Engine 4, which is a very, very well optimized engine, or at least it can be, as long as the developers actually go the trouble and do it. Given the fact that it's 2K, when you look at Borderlands 2, which wasn't really well optimized back on Unreal Engine 3, Unreal Engine 4 is a lot more optimized, and the fact that they're on the Epic Games Store now at first, they're supposedly, at least anyway, working with Epic Games, so we'll see how it goes in that regard. Doesn't really apply to me too much because I'll wait 6 months and I'll get it on Steam, or else I'll just pirate it in a week or whenever they crack it. We'll see. I'm not throwing anything out there just yet, but I will definitely not be buying it. One thing I will say though is the big difference between Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 3 is that it's an absolute crying shame that one of the biggest and best and highest quality features that was in Borderlands 2, it just in technology in general, will not be in Borderlands 3, even though it is supported with the engine and it's just supported with the hardware overall, and it still exists. It's just because of the bullshit partnership. I'm talking specifically about NVIDIA PhysX. NVIDIA PhysX in Borderlands 2 is fantastic. However, AMD are partnering with Gearbox and Take-Two for this fucking thing. So, yeah, that's completely gone out the window. Now we just have completely shit regular physics, and, you know, despite the physics in a 9-year-old game at this point, 7-year-old game at this point, being significantly better than the physics in most, not all, but most other games. Anyway, on to the point here. I do want to say that there is no mention of frame rate in this. I'm assuming it's going to target 60 FPS with these. It's hard to say in some cases. One or two of them I want to say it's probably targeting 30, but we'll talk about it in a minute. But it is very painfully obvious that consoles are still influencing game design, and I can't wait till that changes when next gen comes, when fundamental design changes that people in consoles do not understand because they have no concept of it, because they literally cannot see it and it cannot be run and they cannot visualize it because they have no idea what they're talking about. But once that's all brought up with the new Ryzen stuff for the PS5 and the Xbox 2.4, fundamental basic design changes will happen, and the floor will rise in quality, and that means that the ceiling will also rise along with it. So looking forward to PC in that front too. Anyway, back to what we're talking about here. Like I said, no mention of frame rate, but for 1080p minimum specs, OS, Windows 7, 8, and 10 latest service pack. Obviously, they're going to be 64-bit only. It doesn't say 64-bit, but I'm assuming 64-bit. Processor, AMD FX 8350 or Intel i5 3570, which I think is funny that they listed the AMD ones first because of the partnerships. But the i5 3570 completely murders the the FX 8350 by like leagues at this point. Memory 6GB of RAM, graphics card AMD Radeon HD 7970, again AMD first for some reason. Well, we know why. And an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 680 2GB. Now that 680 is curious to me because most games and the base Xbox One and the base PS4, their hardware, their GPU is similar to a 660. Now a 680 is significantly more powerful than a 660, but it just makes you wonder, is it because it's an end of console life game? Is it 60 FPS that they're targeting on this PC minimum spec? We don't know. We don't know in that regard. But anyway, HDD, hard drive storage capacity, 75GB. Now for 1440p, which is the recommended spec, obviously it's recommended because who the fuck plays a 1080p anymore? Boom! John Carmack says age-old resolution. And anyway, we have recommended specs for 1440p. Again, I'm going to assume frame rate is possibly 60, but we don't know. Operating system Windows 7, 8, and 10, as you would expect. Processor AMD Ryzen 5 2600. Such a huge jump there, mainly because anything before AMD's Ryzen in the last 10 years or so was absolutely a joke, which we'll get to later, and completely obsolete and not regarded in any way, shape, or form, which is why the shitty Jaguar stuff is so shitty. Intel i7 4770, which is not a great CPU in modern era. Someone's going to get pissed off at me for that, but yeah, anyway. RAM is, interestingly, 16GB in 1440p, as up from 6GB, so that's a big jump. Oh, 8GB is enough these days, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, get with the times. Graphics card, AMD Radeon RX 590, which I find is interesting because it is a piece of shit GPU, and they have an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060 6GB. Again, this one makes me think that it is 60 FPS, but again, you would think that someone aiming for recommended spec is also going for a higher frame rate, so that one could be 60, whereas the 1080p could be 30. And again, same 75GB. But it really shows that when you look at the base hardware on this from a CPU and GPU side of it. You have the FX 8350, which is woefully underpowered. I can't say it's the same tier as the console stuff, but it's in around there. The i5 3570 completely murders even the Xbox One X by sheer leagues at this point. That's completely no comparison. But when you look at the base graphics cards as well, the HD 7970 as well as the 680, they're a little bit above the base consoles. Again, this could be down to the consoles being more optimized because, well, they're consoles, but it could also be down to the fact that it's an end of console generation game. Technology has been held back too long. They could be pushing it forward. They could be dragging it forward just to get it out there. But of course, it depends. If the game runs at 25 frames per second on console, that would be a big issue and a big warning that we'd see as a problem. But yeah, that's it for Borderlands 3. Obviously, I am above the 1440p recommended spec, so naturally I'll be playing that completely maxed out. Hopefully on a highly optimized, lovely little 1440p, 110, 120 FPS. Gonna be feels good, man. Gonna be feels good. Just makes me wonder, do I have to wait until April, or am I going to be able to play it cracked very, very shortly after initial launch? Hell, Control was cracked a few hours after launch. Now we have some more info related to that new Capcom Resident Evil project that they were going around with. It's been officially revealed as Project Resistance. Obviously that's a working project title and not a full one. We don't have any proper anything about it yet, other than we know that there will be a teaser trailer release on September 9th, which, off the top of my head, I believe is just at the end of when the Japanese players get to beta test the new game and all that too. You might remember that the American test date is at the end of September. I think it's like the 20th, 21st, 22nd. So it's in before there. And not only that, but during the whole reveal or whatever it is, there were PC, PS4 and Xbox logos, which of course makes perfect sense because the Switch isn't powerful enough to run anything like this. But it begs the age-old question. What is this? Is it Resident Evil 8? Is it Resident Evil 3 Remake? Is it a new, updated version of one of their existing spin-off series? Or is it something completely different and completely new? However, not only are they going to let the Japanese players play it within about a week, and then the American ones play it at the end of the month, and we get our first proper trailer or first proper teaser for it on the 9th, they're also going to have it playable on display. I don't remember its play, but they're going to be showing it off at least on the show floor at Tokyo Game Show on September 12th to 15th. So that's a big one there too. However, also in the meantime, we have some little leaked images taken from like thumbnails and stuff like that too. Then they were blown up and all as well. And it looks like people are thinking it might be a new Outbreak game. Like the PS2 games, Outbreak File 1 and File 2, it looks like it might be a revival of that one. There are, of course, a couple of people out there who wonder, based on what we've seen there, that it might be a Left 4 Dead style game, or it might be an Evolve style game. I don't think it would be Evolve, because like 4-on-1 wouldn't really work too well in that, but it looks like it might be a Left 4 Dead style one, a co-op 4-player style game. I think Outbreak, a new updated Outbreak, might be a bit more plausible as well as a bit more viable. I don't think Outbreak and Left 4 Dead aren't really the same, but I think because of the series, the Outbreak as a series, I think it may not be called Outbreak, but I think it would be very, very similar to Outbreak. But I do think maybe it'll also be called Outbreak Resistance or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. There's a few days before we learn some more info about it, and I am hesitant, but I need to see more before I make a proper judgment. Next up, we got some juicy little PC hardware news. Now, someone's gonna call me a fanboy over this one, but no. Just think about this one, okay? AMD have announced that they are officially settling a class action lawsuit over false advertising. Let me just say that one more time. Class action lawsuit. False advertising. Now this isn't the first time, and I'm going to rightfully point this out because of course Nvidia also did the same thing over false advertising with their piece of shit worst GPU that should probably never ever exist, the GTX 970. Hate that fucking card. It should never have existed. But Yeah, they did the same thing too. So you can say, oh, fanboy there, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, this one is over some of their CPUs, the AMD CPUs. Now, the old Bulldozer chips in particular, there was exact models listed as the FX 9590, 9370, 8370, 8350, 8320, 8150, and 8120. Now, this is not as big of a deal as many people, well, depending on what way you look at it, it's as big as a deal because it is important, of course, but at the same time, it's not much of a big deal, mainly because no one ever bought many of those CPUs, just because, well, pre-Ryzen, like I said, AMD had been completely irrelevant in all CPU aspects for a decade. Ever since the original Athlon 64s and the first, maybe second series of FX2 chips, the dual-core ones, ever since then, that's when they were good, that's when they were hot, that's when they were hype. Then Intel unveiled the Core series, or the Core Duo series, and the Core 2 Duos. AMD been dead since then, until they released Ryzen a few years ago, and then Ryzen 2, and now Ryzen 3, and now they're back to closing the gap. They're not there just yet, but they're almost there. But they're now a viable option again. However, back then, Bulldozer, Piledriver, to even exclude Jaguar, woo lad. Now, the big problem with a lot of these is that in this particular case, they marketed a lot of these CPUs as 8-core chips. Now, that was a big problem because it wasn't really a standard 8-core chip. It was I have it listed here, two separate and independent ALUs and a shared FPU. Basically, it meant it was two dual-core chips, two separate CPUs in one, that couldn't work together. So you couldn't, if you're working on one side of it, if you're working with one half, the other half would be completely idle and wouldn't work properly. So you couldn't use proper multi-threaded performance, you couldn't use multi-core performance. It was just marketing gimmicks, and they fucked up, and well, they like to say that they were wrong, but hell, they had to settle because, yeah, they got fucked. But anyway, the big problem with this, the settlement of 12.1 million, but there was some steep requirements. Now, this 12.1 million is basically a pot that everyone who this affects, who can reach into, if you will, and it's shared evenly between everyone. Now, there's some significant caveats and significant problems with this one here. Mainly because you have to either, if you were affected by any of this, in order to claim any of this money back, you have to have bought the CPU directly through AMD's website, which, let me reiterate, no one, absolutely no one, buys a CPU, or a lot of people don't even buy GPUs or other hardware directly from the manufacturer. We buy them from elsewhere. Every CPU I can think of that I've ever bought I've bought one AMD CPU in my life. I did not buy it from AMD. I've bought multiple Intel CPUs in my life. I've never bought a single one directly from Intel. Of all my GPUs, everything I can think of, every single GPU I have, I never bought my old 6800 GT from Gigabyte. I didn't buy it from them. I didn't buy either of my LeadTech GTX 7800 GTX edition 512s, 512 MBs. I never bought either of them from LeadTech. I bought my GTX 690 from Asus, not from Nvidia, and I bought my 1080 from, who did I buy my 1080 from? I didn't buy them from EVG. Oh, I bought it from EVGA. I didn't buy a regular Founders Edition from Nvidia. So you see my point. I don't know anyone who buys anything directly from the manufacturer. I don't know if this is the case for CPUs in America. But over here, and everyone I talk to and everyone I know, as well as online and stuff too, literally no one has ever bought one directly from a manufacturer. At least a CPU anyway. Because, I mean, you can just buy them cheaper elsewhere. That's all it is. You can buy it cheaper elsewhere. AMD might sell it on a price on their website. You can go to Amazon or Newegg or whatever and buy it cheaper. So no one buys them for this anyway. But also, there's the AMD website requirement, or if you bought it while living in California. Apparently, if you bought it when living in California, it doesn't really matter where you bought it from, but just while you were living there. But there's some steep requirements. But the big important thing to realize here is that it's very, very good to to see a company finally being held accountable for their lies and false and deceptive marketing. Again, Nvidia were guilty of this too because of that fucking piece of shit GTX 970 and its 3.5 and 512, 3.5 gig and 512 MB of RAM. VRAM, that's just absolute bullshit. But as a quick aside before I end this little topic here anyway, this one brings me a special little bit of joy because a long time ago, when it comes to the bulldozer CPUs, of course I never had one, never used one because I know technology and I knew they were a piece of shit, but a member of my old Final Fantasy XIV raid team, they were a UK based one, some of them were Scottish, some of them were English, some of them were Welsh, and obviously I was the Irish dude, the token Irish guy. But one of the English guys, he was so cocky about it. He was so looking forward to his 5 GHz 8 core AMD bulldozer chip. Now I knew better, okay, because, well, that's what I do. But he finally got it, and promptly he was devastated, crushed, destroyed, defeated, deflated, whatever words you want to use, go ahead and use them in there too. He was completely obliterated because even though he had his 5 GHz 8 core CPU compared to my, I suppose you could call it 8 core as well because of threads and cores and all too, 2600K. My 2600K significantly destroyed his bitch ass. Feels Q, man. Great times. But anyway, back to the point. Like I said, it is very, very good to see some of these companies be held accountable for this bullshit, and hopefully it makes them think, as well as other companies think twice about doing deceptive and bullshit marketing going forward, as well as product design in general. On to some more bullshit epic fails here. This time not from AMD, but we have one that you would expect it from. Epic Games are at it again. Now, Epic Games have updated their roadmap for their upcoming features, if you will, for the Epic Games Store. Woo lad, this is going to be bad. But instead of talking about all their future updates properly with ETAs and development and all their insider info and all that stuff, no. They haven't done that. They have now removed projected dates from pretty much every feature that's upcoming and all too. So now they only have recently shipped, up next, and future development. There can be kind of a rough guideline given maybe like a year or something like that for some of their features, but now all those industry standard features that we've seen on pretty much every platform, or at least every relevant platform for years at this point, literally years at this point. Now, well, we can see how they're missing and how they're not going to be properly coming soon, and how even after multiple delays and missed guidelines and missed project dates and whatnot and projected dates, you can now see just how much of a joke, even more, as always, this store is, and just how bad they look in that regard. Oh, and here, you know what, even though cloud computing is, like nearly 6 months overdue, cloud storage and cloud savings, not cloud computing, but even though it's, they were supposed to have it in May, they have it in like, 4 indie games or something at this point. Hey, maybe they'll have preloading sometime soon. But anyway, mod support is officially going to, probably at least anyway, come to the Epic Games Store with a projected release date of sometime in 2020. And just to keep it in mind, and just to keep it in perspective, mod support is coming at some point in 2020. You know what's coming after that? This is official, per their new roadmap. After mod support in 2020, a shopping cart. That's right, the shopping cart. The basic feature that some people think is so overblown because they want to defend the Epic Games Store. You know, during the Steam sale, see, it's ingrained in my mind. It's like, just Google it, you know? Yeah. Remember back in the Epic Games sale, there were all those reports of people actually trying to buy games, and naturally that set off a red flag. Be like, oh, holy shit, people are buying games in our store, that's a red flag, ban their account. But yeah, remember when you tried to buy 2, maybe 3 games in succession, you get locked out of your account? That doesn't happen when you have a shopping cart. But next up, we have some good news, or bad news or potential news or some type of news. You can judge it for yourself based on, well, what we talk about here. But we got some Master Chief, Halo Master Chief Collection PC related news. Halo Reach has officially had its second beta test, the Flight 2 Firefight, or as they call it, Fireflight on there too. It was 10 times bigger this time. You might remember back when they did the first first campaign test that there was less than 1,000 people chosen, just under 1,000. This one is 10,000 participants. It's 10 times bigger. They invited 10,000 participants in there too. Now I didn't get picked this time either, which is fine. Which is fine. But the survey is the good news to take away from this. They're going to be sending out a survey relating to the second beta test, the Firefight one, and they're going to collect all that info. They're going to pull it together. They're going to analyze it. They're going to come out with all this info and stuff too. And then once that's done, it's going to be published publicly. And people will be able to see it. They'll be able to see what it runs on, how it runs on different PC hardware, feedback with controls, and just everything in general. Think of it like a giant bug testing phase. It is basically a giant beta when you think about it. A lot of people have been talking about it. A lot of people have been saying there's a lot of praise going around that controls with the mouse and keyboard, that it's almost perfect and it almost feels like it's exactly where it should be. Of course, there's more time because of all the beta tests and the feedback they can get. There's more time to test this and fine-tune it to make it feel just that bit perfect. Well, just completely perfect, which is a very important thing because naturally a mouse and keyboard is the best for a first-person shooter, and that is what we need. That is absolutely what we need, and I can't wait. However, I will say I'm absolutely dying for it to release. I want to play it so badly. And I don't want to go back to my Xbox One to play it. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. I need the Master Chief Collection on PC in my life. I know it's going to start with Reach. From original projections, we're one beta test away from full release. Oh God, I just want it. It needs to happen. The sooner the better, as providing that they can get us a good quality experience. I just can't fucking wait. So that's it for all the gaming related news, and we're on to the real meat of the reason why we do this. The real reason why everyone tunes in, because we all know that everyone is really here to know, Q, what is up with you? What are you doing? What are you playing? What is going on? Well, Yakuza Kiwami is what's going on. Yakuza Kiwami is my main deal. That's my big focus now for the moment. I'm going to be kind of playing that pretty much hardcore. That's the real big thing. Like when you sit down and you decide, oh, I want to properly invest in a game, I want to properly play a game to completion, Yakuza Kiwami is my current version of that. I'm looking forward to completing it. I'm on chapter 5 at the moment. I'm a few hours in. I don't know exactly how long the game is in either chapter or length. People have told me it's shorter than Yakuza 0 and that it may be about 20 hours long, but I don't. We don't know how that translates over to a beast like me. But there is one or two things I do want to say about this. It's mainly a personal gripe because of how I played the Yakuza series and the order I played them in. Obviously, Yakuza launched a million years ago on PS2, and the characters in that were established as they were in that and going forward through Yakuza 1 to 6. Then, Yakuza 0 launched. I don't know what order exactly it launched in, but then let's say after 6, Yakuza 0 launched, or even maybe after 5. Either way, the characters were long established. Then Yakuza 0 launched, and I know Goro Majima, whatever you want to call him. I know him as the suave, slick, suit-wearing club owner, not the crazy lunatic. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how I like him in Yakuza Kiwami, and probably going forward too. But at that point you have to wonder, Q, are you wrong? Because that's not how the character was originally found and established. I don't know. I just like it as Majima that I know him from Zero anyway. But on top of all of that, I am looking forward to eventually moving on to Kiwami 2, and then of course playing 3, 4, 5, and 6 when they're all on PC as well. Mainly because Kiwami 2 I hear is so much better. Everyone tells me it's a better story and it's based on a better game, Yakuza 2 being better than Yakuza 1. And it uses the Dragon engine, which is significantly upgraded properly for next gen, for PS4 and Xbox One and whatnot, obviously in PC too. So the big difference on that one is when you look at it with, say, Yakuza 6, which also uses the Dragon engine, Yakuza Kiwami 2 also uses it, there'll be massive upgrades in performance, in visuals, and just in basic game design and everything else, which I'm looking forward to in that regard, definitely too. I'm not really feeling Control. I've put a significant amount of time into it. I'm probably right at the end, I'd imagine, based on what's going on story-wise. And I'm just not really feeling it. I'm not 100% negative on it, but I'm definitely not positive on it. So I just don't know what to do and what way I can comment on it in that regard. Now, I have made a video about it that I haven't published yet. I'm going to wait till I finish the game and then maybe reflect on it over on a day or two. If I still feel that way, I will publish the video. If I don't, maybe I'll delete it and redo a different one. But I can use this as a good example, because if a game doesn't leave you with a positive impression and it doesn't leave you with a negative impression, isn't that, in a sense, a negative impression? Because I'm going to use this as a great example. Back when the Switch was first properly detailed and all in January of 2017, I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and we were talking about it. He's like, what do you think about the Switch? Are you hyped for it? Do you care? Do you hate it? Whatever. I said, well, listen, you know what? You think for a new console they'd want to wow you, to hype you up, to give you a large, ginormous positive impression. However, they didn't give me that. But they also didn't give me a negative impression, so I was still kind of mediocre and just wanted to wait and see. However, because you should want to come away from a new console reveal with a massive positive impression, if you don't get that, isn't that indicative of it being a negative impression? Because they didn't wow you, because I don't know, that's the way I compare it to, for that at least, anyway. I was originally going to give Blair Witch a go as well, because I kind of like that game, the survival horror first-person games that don't really rely on combat, at least as far as I know. When you look at Outlast and Outlast 2, I really enjoyed those games. Much more enjoyed Outlast 1. Outlast 2 was a little bit not as high quality, but it was still a decent game. So I was thinking that Blair Witch would be a lot like that. In fact, if you go back and watch the reveal, the announcement of Blair Witch, at first I thought it was Outlast 3. Then I correctly predicted it was Blair Witch. But that's beside the point. So we go back and we do that. But because of timing and time zones and when I finished work and what I was doing and all that, and time off, I didn't get a chance to play Blair Witch at launch. And part of me is kind of happy I didn't, because the game is getting massively panned. So we have to wait and see. And the fact that I have so much planned as well, so much upcoming stuff planned, it makes me want to kind of put Blair Witch on hold for the moment. Just like the Man of Medan or Man of Median, whatever it's called. But that's down the line now. But Gears 5, that's also in there. Gears 5 is now going to launch on September 5th at 9 PM local time, which is booyah for me. So I'm looking forward to that. I can't wait to get it preloaded. Hopefully the preloads go proper, because, well, they fucked up announcing it's like, oh yeah, now it's now available to preload on all platforms. You can preload it on Xbox, you can preload it on the Windows 10 store, but you can't preload it on Steam. Not all platforms then. But it is definite. Can't wait to go hard with the campaign and then move on to Horde. Might try that escape mode a few times, but Horde is where it's really at. Obviously I'm going to do the campaign too, like I said, but Horde is the down the line, long term kind of thing. But it's going to see how it goes. I don't know. The Borderlands / Overcooked 2 crew are mostly massive disappointments with their spotty at best attendance record, but yeah. Hopefully it goes better. Hopefully it goes well. Speaking of Overcooked 2, actually, we're on the very last level of one of the DLCs. We won't manage to get that done for a few days, mainly because I can use this as a segue. Tonight, we have AEW All Out. Now, not only can I, unfortunately, not watch All Out live at night, but one of the guys is actually going to be there in person. One of our Overcooked 2 / Borderlands 2 crew, one of them is there in person, so he can't make that anyway. So it will be tomorrow at probably the earliest, before we finally finish that last bit of DLC, with the next and I believe final bit of Overcooked 2 DLC coming in about 2 weeks or so, and we'll see how the carnival based one goes with carnival food and promises of oh, what did they call it? Like a cannon to shoot yourself back and forth across the map. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes in the new changes and all. Overcooked 2 is a blast, so that's going to be good. But I will say this, right? Even though Gears 5 will, well, Yakuza Kiwami will be done, there'll be a big gap between Yakuza Kiwami and Yakuza Kiwami 2. But of course, with Gears 5, once the campaign is done, Horde will be semi-regular and whatnot too. But what I want to do big and important properly as my next big game will be Final Fantasy VIII Remaster. And this is a big thing for me, because I have never finished Final Fantasy VIII. I've tried to finish it multiple times over the last maybe 10 years. Now, for those of you out there who don't know, I hate Final Fantasy VIII. I can't stand it. So many bad things about it. It's just so unenjoyable in almost every way. I've almost finished Final Fantasy VIII way back in the day. I got to the final castle. I had so much done, so much extra stuff done and all too, and I got to the final castle. I won't spoil it for you, but there's a point of no return and like order and stuff like that. Where I got locked and blocked into, I couldn't progress any further. It was just physically impossible. Given the situation I was in, it was physically impossible. You can't go back, and I was fucked. So yeah, that was a problem. Now, Final Fantasy VIII Remaster, I am going to sit down and play it and give it a full go properly. I doubt I'll stream it. I'm just doing a long JRPG like that just wouldn't work for me, at least anyway. But I want to sit down. I want to focus on it. I want to play it. I want to enjoy it. I want to do as much. Well, I want to try and enjoy it, and I want to do as much as I can in order to finish it, to get this monkey off my back. My Kobayashi Maru moment that originally fucked me over way back in the day is now going to be. I'm going to change the rules in order to get this done and to get this finished. So I do want to do that, and that's pretty big, and that's pretty important to me. But because of all of that and all of this happening within the next week, basically, I am going to have to put Catherine Full Body on hold for a while. Now, I'm still buying it at launch because I do have the big premium collector's edition ordered. Naturally, if I cancel that and then try to buy it later, I'm out of luck. But I'm going to have to worry about playing it much later, and I don't know if I'll stream it or whatever. I've already streamed Catherine Classic. I'll just get back to playing it myself, but it is down the line, especially because Final Fantasy VIII will be such a long game. But yeah. And then, like, within a couple of week period after that, because when you think of finishing Final Fantasy VIII and all too, I've got the Mega Drive Mini. Not only do I have the Mega Drive Mini, but over the next while, I've got the Mega Drive Mini, which has, 42 games on it, Luigi's Mansion 3, Doom Eternal, Pokemon, whatever I need to pirate from the Epic Games Store, maybe Borderlands 3, Detroit Become Human, Outer Worlds, Shenmue 3. You see what I mean? And not only that, but I also have the big Capcom home arcade thing coming. So, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot. This is why I had to remove Man of Medan, or Man of Medan, whatever it's called, indefinitely. And Blair Witch is now possibly indefinitely on hold, or at least till a sale or something like that. But anyway, that's it. That is all we have time for in our lovely little episode Deuce of the Quack Experimental Podcast. Now I want to thank everyone for joining me for this, as always, because, well, that's why I do this stuff, isn't it? Now, of course, feel free to let me know any thoughts and opinions on anything here in the comments section below, as well as any particularly interesting topics you want me to take a look at. Just like you can slide into the DMs on Twitter. They are open for one of many reasons being that. And I can promise I will take a look at it. Can't promise to talk about it, but we'll see what it is and how it goes. So that's it. As always, remember to hit the appropriate button to let me know how I did on the video, and while you're at it, why not hit the subscribe button and even ring the little notification bell so you can be one of the first people every weekend notified when the next new episode of our lovely little baby here comes live on YouTube. Anyway, until then, as always, thank you for watching, everybody, and remember that winners don't play switchboards.